Hi, I'm Michelle, and am I the straight-laced psychotherapist?
I thought I was going to be the unconventional hypnotherapist, and you were going to be the super serious trauma specialist.
No, you are going to be the relationship expert, like love expert.
And you're going to be the specialist who guides people with down-to-earth techniques for transmuting trauma?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, good. I'll be the love expert. I mean, I am the love expert. I think we have this all sorted out. I'm Laura Richer, founder of Anchor Light Therapy Collective.
And I'm Michelle Mooney, a therapist at Anchor Light, and this is Holding Ground. Today and every Monday, we've got a little bit of everything for you. Shall we?
Yeah, let's do this.
Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Laura Sullivan Cassidy, also known as LC. This is episode 2 of Holding Ground. We're live every Monday at 9 on 1150 AM radio. You can stream this show anytime on the KKNW website or catch Holding Ground in podcast form on iTunes, SoundCloud, and other streaming platforms. If you tuned in last week for our first episode, thank you very much. If you're new, welcome and thank you. Created and hosted by two therapists at Anchor Light Therapy Collective on Queen Anne Hill in Seattle, Washington, Holding Ground is about navigating relationships and personal growth through positive change. Or, if you want to boil it down to its sticky, bittersweet, transformative cellular matter, it's about love and trauma.
Yes, it is. I am Laura Richer, founder of Anchor Light Therapy Collective, and I am here with LC as well as my co-host and colleague, Michelle Mooney. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And hey, Michelle, can you tell everyone where they can find us if they want to learn a little bit more about Holding Ground or Anchor Light?
Please connect with us on social media. Facebook, we're on Holding Ground for our radio show, Anchor Light Therapy Collective for our practice. Instagram, Holding Ground Talk Radio, all one word, and Anchor Light Therapy, all one word.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so you might remember that last week LC was here for a special kickoff episode, and we kind of decided this is the kind of thing that the more the merrier. So LC is going to be joining us moving forward, and we're going to be a trio for a little while here. So I'm so glad you're back with us.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to be a trio. I'm into it. I love helping you guys talk through these important conversations, and today the important conversation is about dating. So today on Holding Ground, what we're going to share are the new dating rules.
First of all, happy to be back here today with you, Laura and Elsie, and to our listeners. So, Laura, can you explain, are we diving into the deep wading pool of dating? Because, social distancing plus dating right now, our listeners might need a little guidance around that.
Yes, it sounds complicated.
No, we're not gonna dive into all that. I can tell you, I've never been more happy to not be a Cosmo magazine editor, compiling one of those "How to Plan a Date in a Pandemic" articles. I also don't want to brush over what's a pretty big topic as we navigate this idea about getting back into our normal routines of life. The particulars of sex and dating and love aren't always mentioned in the media, but there is a lot out there. So while we're going to talk about sort of the attitudes and the healthy lifestyle kind of mindsets that go into all this, there's a lot more tactical and logistical information out there, and we encourage you to use it and to be safe first and foremost. So get your Google fired up and educate yourself and seek some insight on how to really, truly be safe.
Yes. And so just to be clear, we're not giving advice on how to plan dates. I don't even know where you start with that. You can't go to dinner. You have to wear a mask. So we won't go there, but what we are going to talk about is what it's like trying to date in these current circumstances and some good practices for being healthy and navigating relationships during these times of uncertainty. So as human beings, we despise uncertainty. We pretty much do everything we possibly can to avoid it. And dating is already a pretty uncertain circumstance. All of the, are they the one? Will they call? Should I invest my time in this? So it can be a little complicated when life is already uncertain and then you're trying to date, which in and of itself is uncertain.
Okay, perfect. I like this. So our thing isn't today so much how to per se. We're not planning your dates, so sorry guys, but instead we're talking more about how to navigate dating in our current landscape of this pandemic, social change. There's a lot of extra stress with finances, concerns about even being able to pay for dates. If we've experienced unemployment, just a lot of uncertainty right now. So people want to know how to do this in a physically and emotionally safe world right now.
Exactly. So we said we're going to talk about my new dating rules, but spoiler alert, they're really the same as my old dating rules for the most part. And there's definitely some other things, too, that we want to make note that it's good to be, like Elsie said earlier, just to be extra smart and cautious of creating healthy practices during this time.
Yep, we're all about the extra smart. So, Laura, you're coming at it with all you know about relationships and when and why they work and why they sometimes break down so easily. You're our love expert, so that's your take on it all. And Michelle, as a trauma expert, you're filtering in your expertise around growth, recovery, resiliency, stability. So that's kind of the lay of the land here. And here's the thing. We just have 3 rules. We have 3 big, deep, powerful new dating rules. And we're going to look at them from both sides. The rules as they apply to all of you who are listening, but also as they apply to others, meaning the folks that you're dating. And as we go through the rules, we're going to flip them around and look at them from different sides. And we're also going to just take a look at how the media at large is sort of weighing in on things, just to make sure that, sort of checking ourselves and to understand that we're on the right track and to give you that extra layer of validity that the way that we're thinking about this is worth thinking about. So let's get down to it.
All right.
Laura, what's number 1?
Okay, so number 1, probably the most important one, is lead with your values. So think about what is really important to you in another person, what traits are compatible with you, what you want to get out of a relationship. So this is actually a really good time. Hopefully we've been reflecting on this a little bit if dating is something that you are pursuing. We've had 3 months of being quarantined, so that's given us a lot of time to think about what is important. And in my practice, I work with couples as well as singles who are looking to attract the right relationship. And a lot of my clients were all ready to start 2020 and get out there, and they'd done some work on themselves, and then this hit. And it was super disappointing that now we have to wait again. And while I completely get that, it was, disappointing just to have everything shut down. At the same time, it gave us a really good opportunity to do some self-reflection. So, I have been encouraging my clients, whether it's in dating or really any aspect of your life, to just use this time to evaluate what is important for you and be really intentional about what it is that you want to create in your life. Life is so busy for us most of the time. We're just responding to what's happening, and we don't get the opportunity to create things in a really intentional manner. So that's maybe one of the gifts of this time if we're looking for a silver lining. And you want to use that as your guiding light. What is important to you? What are your values? And think about that as you move forward in dating.
Laura, I really like that you brought up values. So values can guide us in all of our decision making. And one thing I like to stick to is the 7-10 rule. So when we're listing out our values, we might definitely have more than 10, but narrowing it down to our top 10. And then anytime we're making a decision, and in this case in particular to dating and choosing a partner, right, if they are not meeting at least, and the situation is not meeting at least 7 out of the 10 of your values, you probably don't want to do it.
I absolutely agree. 50-50 is not enough.
Yeah, exactly. They kind of got it, but they most also don't too. Also, in terms of values, values and kindness is key for me. So looking for a partner, looking for traits where they are kind to you, obviously, kind to themselves and kind to others. I really like to suggest that. And somebody who takes care of themselves, right? They can recognize within themselves when they have some work to do. Someone who takes care of their own mental health, obviously.
Yes, and that is such a good point, because sometimes what happens in dating is if we aren't taking good care of ourselves or our own mental health or doing our own work, we might be looking for someone as a distraction instead of focusing on the things that we need to address on our own. So you don't want dating to be a distraction. You want to be able to create a positive dating experience and know why you're there. So yes, values. Think of, and everyone has different values, and you want to think of what's important to you and also what you're bringing to the table. So I have a really good exercise that I ask people to do. It's super simple. I just want you to make a list. I want you to make a list of the things that are important to you and another person, compassion, generosity, humor, honesty. And then also part of that list should be what you bring as well, because I think it's really important to know your worth and what you're bringing to the table and make sure you connect with someone that's offering the same. And then the next part of the list is to think a little bit about the type of relationship that you're wanting to attract. So, maybe you're looking for something long-term or something serious, or maybe you're looking for something more casual, and either one is fine. You just want to be clear on what that is for you. So think about what you're willing to invest in a new relationship right now. Some people are still really nervous about COVID and a second wave coming, and they don't want to go out in the real world and meet people, but they are open to connecting on Tinder or Bumble or doing a Zoom date here and there, exchanging a few emails, and that's perfect. Or maybe you're available for something more and you want to just be really clear on what that is and who would be a good match for whatever it is you're looking for. I think a lot of times people feel like they meet someone and then they feel disappointed that the person isn't meeting their expectations, and somehow that's a reflection of their value. And that's actually never true.
Right. Expectations, when we set those up, right, we're kind of just setting ourselves up for future resentment. So that's something that I like to pay attention to. And I really like that you're covering the spectrum of possible dates and possible relationships, because not everyone can afford to take wine and go on a picnic in the park right now or doing something like that. So we are trying to get to know each other over technology platforms, right? So email and Zoom, I kind of like to now think of Zoom as the new dating app, and creating that real foundation and exchanging and writing back emails to each other, or seeing each other and chatting that way. So, and that can really help form a more emotional connection before you actually do meet in person. So,
Yeah, it's really forcing us to slow down, which is really, I think, there's a lot of benefits to that. So, just be clear about what you're looking for. Like I said, healthy relationships happen with people who really know what they want and that they're not using the relationship kind of as an emotional Band-Aid, that they're very clear on what their intentions are and they are not coming from a place of lack or feeling needy or desperate. We can all sense desperation a mile away. Nobody likes that. And like I said, clear about what it is that you want to attract, whether that's something casual or just for fun or something more serious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out, is that, no matter what it is, I think, just being real about it, we want to recognize that there may be some people out there looking for a mate, and there may be people out there that really are looking for something a bit more casual, and that's fair and that's valid, but there's ways to do that safely as well, and to sort of protect your heart and protect other people's heart and be really mindful about it at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. If you know what you want is to have fun and just meet some new people and just date for the sake of dating, that's fantastic. Or if you're looking for something more serious, then you want to line up with the people who are also looking for something more serious. Everyone's going to be happier all the way around. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I just a little call out that I love that list making exercise that you talked about. We touched on that in the first episode really briefly, just this idea that sort of as an alternative, as an add-on to something like talk therapy, doing these kind of journaling exercises. I mean, of course, I would say this because I'm a writer, but I do recognize there's so much value in it, and I love that Michelle's talked about it as well. Just this idea of writing things out with your hand, holding a pencil on a real piece of paper, and that's just such a great exercise.
Yeah, it's so powerful, and that kind of work can be really healing and insightful for many of us. So I talked on our last show about art therapy, and like you're saying, Elsie, like holding that pencil, right, writing it down on paper, it's really a release of what's going on within ourselves. And one exercise I really like is called rapid journaling. So it's essentially just sitting down and doing like an emotional dump on paper. So it doesn't have to even make sense. It's obviously, it doesn't have to be poetry. It can be something like, my boss yelled at me today and it scared me and it reminded me of this other time when, and then I got home and the house was a mess and dinner wasn't cooked, right? We're just writing down everything that happened or how we're feeling, and just getting it all out. And then some people set a timer for this. So like, okay, 2 minutes, I'm just going to get it all out on paper. And then once that time is up,
I love it. What do you call that?
I call it rapid journaling.
Rapid journaling, yeah.
There's some other terms for it right out there as well. But yeah.
That's great. Okay, so just to back up this initial idea about leading with your values, I want to share something from, this is kind of our media moment. Remember, we're checking in here. I want to share something from the New York Times by Helen Fisher, who has a pretty cool job. She's the chief science advisor to Match.com, which means that she analyzes their data and trends and just is sort of authority on how online dating works. And she's totally on board with this first rule of ours. Here's what she said in the Times recently. During this pandemic, singles are likely to share far more meaningful thoughts of fear and hope, and to get to know vital things about a potential partner fast. Psychologists report that this self-disclosure, the process of revealing one's innermost thoughts, attitudes, and experiences, spurs intimacy, love, and commitment. These are the foundation stones of a sturdy partnership, and research shows that men are just as likely to disclose their secret feelings as women. She's got a link there to this scholarly paper that talks about how true that is. So I think that's just really a nice moment for us to have that kind of data backup.
Yeah, thank you, Elsie. I think that's a really great quote. So, with our trauma that we're going through, circling back to trauma right now, with all of this adjustment, with all the fear that we have, with all the uncertainty, being able to share that with a partner, we're going through a similar experience. So being able to connect on that level, even though it might not be a pleasant connection, right? Being able to support each other during this time, going through similar experiences. And like you said, it spurs intimacy and commitment and love. So Laura, what do you say to clients, if a date comes into the scene and he's just swinging with all this big talk and bravado, or, what if they're even just closed off and it's boring small talk that feels really inconsequential?
Well, if your date is boring small talk, you probably don't want to go. Maybe you could go on a second date, but it's probably not going to go anywhere. That just might not be the person you're compatible with if you're not finding any conversation. But I think it's something that they said in this. I love this quote, and I love the idea that we can all connect about this shared experience. And at the same time, I think that there could be a little bit of risk in some of that. And that leads me to my next point, or my next dating rule, which is to take things really slow. I feel like in times when we feel really vulnerable and exposed and maybe fearful or lonely, a lot of us have been isolated for the last few months. If you live alone, you might have been really isolated. And there might be that temptation to connect with somebody to, again, fill an emotional need. And that might cause you to maybe not see things as clearly, which, going back to rule 1, is why we need to make our list. So we have it at the forefront of our mind of what we're really looking for, and that we can hold ourselves accountable and notice when maybe we've connected with someone who really isn't a good match, but we are just, like I said, we're lonely or we're bored or we feel afraid, and we're holding on for those reasons. So the important thing with going slow is you really want to give time to allow someone to show you who they are. And we really can't know that about somebody in just a couple of dates. I had a client the other day who was telling me about one of their friends who I don't know. But she had met somebody just within the last couple of weeks. She had met somebody, they hit it off, and they had already said, I love you, in 3 dates, and they were planning on moving in together.
Yikes.
Solid
Wow.
plan.
Wow.
So what could go wrong in that situation?
Yeah.
But I think that we might feel more compelled to do that right now because we're going through really hard things. And so you want to reach out to your community and the people that you already know, and maybe don't let dating be that tool for you. Call your mom or your friend or go to therapy or whatever. But we don't want to use dating as a way to soothe uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah, and I think, right now and any time, right, this applies. So loneliness, right, really is that lack of connection. We're feeling that more than ever. And connection is a need that we all have as human beings, right? But trying to fill a void with just whoever, so the small talk person or, so,
We had nothing to say to each other, but I guess I'll talk to him again.
And then we'll move in together. So it'll be really great. Okay. So right now, obviously we're still in a pandemic. Local businesses are just opening up again, and everyone is coming out of months of isolation. So definitely not a good time to hurry love.
No. And it really never is. You really want to give people, you want to just take time to really get to know who you're with. And even if they're super attractive and the chemistry is spot on, like you still need more than 3 dates to see who you're dealing with. So
at least 4.
At least. But I also want to have empathy and compassion, and I do for that desire that, these are hard times. We do want to have somebody that we're connected with. And we just don't want, these are the consequences of connecting with the wrong person too soon can be really big. So we want to just keep that in mind.
Yeah. I think I've heard a lot of people in other topics talk about they like the way that quarantine slowed down the pace of life. A lot of people talking 2 months ago about, wow, I really actually sort of like this. And, I have time to think more, and I have time to understand what I'm doing, and, even just to have more conversations with people. So sometimes I don't know if you guys see this as well, but there can be these funny pendulums. I also had read something this morning. It was described as like a thermostat effect where, you turn the heat way up, and then all of a sudden you're too hot and you're opening all the windows, and so a lot of times in life we kind of go real far one way and then we got to come back the other. And I think that's kind of what we're getting at here is, not to sort of overcorrect too much. And I think maybe just holding on to that feeling that we've all had recently of experiencing life at a different, slower pace. And the temptation is gonna be there to go fast if you kind of like feel a little spark or something. But how do you really then like kind of remind yourself, what's that rubber band around your wrist or something that goes, oh, no, I like it slow. I like to go slow. This feels good to go slow. So,
or even if you don't like to go slow, like anxious people don't like to go slow. They want to know right now, where is this going to go? Is it going to work out?
Do they like me? Is this long term?
Yeah. Am I wasting my time? So, So anxiety will actually tell you that you need to know right now. And that's fear. Anxiety is a form of fear. And we don't want to listen to fear because that is always guiding us in the wrong direction. So even if it's a little uncomfortable for you, it is going to be better. Again, you want to be able to know people and be able to really see if they're going to be a good fit for you. And that because you want to create, it's not that you just want to meet somebody. You want to have an amazing relationship. At least that's the intention. That was always my intention in dating and the clients that I work with. So you want to be able to give yourself that opportunity, and rushing things a lot of times is going to sabotage that.
Right.
Yeah, and you're talking about that anxiety, right? And anxiety guides us. Like it's a survival mechanism, right? So is this situation safe? And so when we want to push things, we want to know right away, is this safe? Again, is this person committed to me? Is this going to, are we buying a house? Are we going to have the, 2.5 children, right? And knowing that right away, then we have that, sense of security. But that's not how relationships or healthy relationships are formed, right? It's an organic process. And ultimately, you're going to be more satisfied if you let things play out the way they're supposed to and getting to know each other. And kind of like therapy, it's a process.
It's a process, yeah. I mean, and unfortunately, really in life in general, I think right now things seem so much more uncertain than normal. I mean, this is much different than anything that we've ever seen in our lifetimes. But at the same time, nothing is ever certain. We don't ever get to have that guarantee. So we just have to get on board with that.
I think that's one of the great lessons right now is that, maybe this is the first time that we've experienced right in front of our faces, that we don't have things scripted out. There is no, the best laid plans, right? Mm-hmm. They don't always transpire the way that we imagine them.
Yeah. And sometimes there's better things that are coming that we didn't imagine. So if you could just be with that uncertainty and that anxiety and find ways to navigate it instead of trying to avoid it.
Right.
Because we can't avoid it. So, yeah.
And Michelle, I'm going to jump in with something. It strikes me that there may be things that working with folks that are experiencing a lot of trauma, I'm wondering if there are ways that you speak about dating differently with those folks, or with folks that are really experiencing a lot of trauma in their lives, or really trying to work to understand the trauma in their lives. Is dating something, is that sort of a big topic in the trauma world?
Huge topic, right? So trauma, really the biggest thing it affects for us is the way we connect to each other. So, and when there's a lot of unresolved trauma there, it can lead to a lot of relationship barriers. So, we can think within ourselves, well, I'm never going to find someone that accepts me anyway. So sometimes then we enter a relationship where this person does accept me on some level, let's just do that, right? We also might have the idea around relationships aren't safe, or if we already have insecurities around our appearance, right? Like right now, no one's had a haircut in 6 months. And yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, maybe we even feel less confident getting out there right now because of that. But, going through trauma and bad events also in general can leave us with a wider lens of who we are and what we're looking for. And speaking of lists, one thing I really like to use with people, especially people who've experienced traumatic relationships, is 2 lists. So we're giving folks a lot of lists today, a lot of homework. We'll check in on this with everyone next week. But so 2 lists. On one side, it's what do I deserve in a relationship, and on the other side is what I will not tolerate. And I find with folks who have experienced trauma that what I deserve piece is the hardest portion of the list for people who have been through trauma. So if you're having a hard time connecting to what you think you might deserve, think back to a time or a relationship where it went really poorly, right? And analyze in that situation. So let's say you got in a horrible fight that didn't make any sense. So what did you need in that situation? Well, you needed respect, you needed understanding, you needed compassion. So then suddenly you realize these are the things that I deserve in a relationship overall. So using this list as a guide to refer back to and staying on track with your resiliency, right, that comes out of trauma. And another thing with that is, when we get through really difficult things and can get over a lot of this stuff and re-strengthen our lives, that's really attractive to other people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, another aspect of that I see in couples therapy when issues around trauma come up, and it's kind of like a PTSD from a past traumatic relationship. Is that they bring that experience with them into the new relationship. And so they have a new partner now, and they're kind of projecting onto them what happened in their old relationship. They're fearful of it. They don't want it to happen again. And so they kind of start to see it everywhere. So maybe an example, a couple I was working with, one person experienced a domestic violence situation in a relationship. And so whenever her partner now expresses anger, she just kind of panics. Well, it's normal to express anger. Human beings in a healthy way can express anger, but she's bringing that into the new relationship and projecting it onto her current partner. So I think it's also really important to be as self-aware as you can that, is what I'm worried about right now, am I bringing something from my past into my current relationship? And if you are, that's something that you can work on.
Yeah. So in your example of the anger, right? So even though this particular partner probably wasn't going to be also a, physically abusive person, for somebody who brings that into a relationship, it's unresolved trauma, that anger alone is a trigger, right? Mm-hmm. So our brains see anger, that's, the preceding fact, thing that leads into physical violence sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. So we see that our bodies can tense up, our brains are telling us alarm bells. We recognize this as an unsafe thing. And so that projection piece, right? Well, he's angry or she's angry, so maybe this other thing is coming along. So understanding what your triggers are and talking through those in therapy and with your partner too, like, hey, when you do this behavior, it makes me feel this certain way, and having that open connection around that.
Yeah. And you do want to be in a pretty, you don't have to be perfect, but you want to be in a kind of a healthy place when you're dating, because sometimes dating's hard. And if you're feeling really fragile or vulnerable, mm-hmm. it might not be the best time to start. You might want to take a little time for yourself.
Yeah. Well, number 2, go slow there's a lot to say there.
So many good reasons for that. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So let's look at it in reverse, thinking now that we gave this great set of tools and insight for how we can control what we can control, and we can get better at what we can get better at. But what happens when the person that we're dating or talking to, or, maybe talking to about dating, when we can see that maybe they're not thinking in the same slow slow way.
So somebody who wants to move things forward really quickly, I think that's always a red flag. I think that, and you hear the stories of, somebody who they on their first date, decided to get married and lived happily ever after. And while that has maybe,
Who was that?
I don't know, that has maybe happened. I can't think of a real life example, but maybe anything is possible. But that is typically like 99.9% of the time not going to work out. So I think that the piece that you want to remember is that moving forward too quickly is going to be a red flag, that somebody's trying to fill a need that they probably should be trying to fill themselves. So maybe they're lonely, maybe they're bored, maybe they're worried about their financial security and want to latch on to somebody else. I think when we look at reasons why people push ahead quickly, they're usually not all that romantic.
Well,
Good point.
Well, and like we were talking about earlier, right? Like trying to fill that void in some way, right? Just whoever we can place into that puzzle piece or that puzzle, right? And when we see that in a partner as well, so we can work on that all we want in ourselves. If we connect to somebody that, is trying to rush things, that and also has these barriers to them being able to connect in a relationship, so they haven't worked on their own stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe they're projecting onto you, Laura, I'm seeing this anger, so then X, Y, and Z, or, something leading, projecting again.
Yeah, and then you're going to be kind of playing out their old relationship with them if they haven't resolved it. Or, the other thing that you can find is somebody who is more avoidant in relationships, and maybe they for whatever reasons, aren't comfortable with intimacy or connection. And what I see happen a lot of the time is people will take that as something being wrong with them. So I meet this person and they're really cute and they're really fun and they're going to be the one, but then they are not available. And so that must be because I'm not good enough. And that isn't true. We can really value people and think they're fun and cute and just genuinely appreciate them as human beings, and they aren't compatible for the kind of relationship we want to be in. And while that feels very personal, it isn't.
Right.
Hey, great. Okay, well, let's see. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll just get down to the rest of our dating rules.
Some people choose their specialty, and sometimes the specialty chooses them. For me, becoming a relationship therapist, well, it was a little of both. Hi, I'm Laura Richer, founder of Anchor Light Therapy Collective. And over the last decade, I've explored love from every angle. Professionally, self-love, unrequited love, and yes, personally too. I love love. It's the most powerful force on the planet. It affects everything we do. My co-host, Michelle Mooney, is an absolute expert on healing anxiety and trauma and the ways we can move out of pain and suffering to create a life full of purpose and meaning.
This is Holding Ground, our passion, our one big thing in life, above and beyond love, relationships, trauma, addiction, and healing. Our specialty is helping others. At the end of the day, and well, on every Monday morning, what motivates us and drives us is helping you. So thank you for being here. It's sort of the best thing you could ever do.
Aw, I love that. But I guess I would, right?
Find us online at anchorlighttherapy.com.
Hey, welcome back to Holding Ground from Anchor Light Therapy Collective. We're going over the new rules of dating today. They are kind of like the old rules, but they're different.
With a little twist.
With a little kind of COVID twist.
With a pandemic twist.
Yeah.
Just how we like it.
Our first rule, just to catch you up, our first rule was all about leading with your values and really determining what's important to you and what's important about you. And there was a list-making episode, or rather a list-making exercise included in that I think is super valuable. And right now we're in the middle of rule number 2, which is go slow. But yeah, if you missed the first part of the show, I'm going to recommend hitting up the KKNW website where you can stream our shows anytime, or finding Holding Ground on iTunes, Spotify, or some other podcast platforms. Just Google and use the search tool for Holding Ground.
So also, Michelle, can you tell everybody where they can find us if they want to contact us at Anchorlight and do some one-on-one work if they need a little dating support during the pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. So anchorlighttherapy.com, folks can find us. They can fill out forms. If you're interested in a consultation, please contact us that way.
Yep, we offer a 20-minute complimentary consultation just to chat a little with you and see how we can help you out.
Right, exactly. And if you want to find us on social media for the radio show, Holding Ground on Facebook and Holding Ground Talk Radio on Instagram, all one word. For Anchor Light Therapy, Facebook, Anchor Light Therapy Collective, Instagram, Anchor Light Therapy.
We are all over the place. So,
We are.
Okay, so just to recap, we said 1, lead with your values, know what you bring to the table, know what you're looking for, and know what kind of relationship you want to be in, and look for somebody who's compatible with that. That's always more fun. And then 2, we said take it slow, and there are so many good reasons to take it slow. You want to really get to know who you're dealing with. You don't want to try to use somebody as a distraction or fill an emotional need. That is just not what dating is for. So,
Yes.
that's where we're at right now. And now we were going to talk about our third one. And our third one, I think, is...
Sorry, can I interrupt you?
Please do.
We were just going to, because in keeping with our little sort of methodology here, we were also checking in with other sources on the internet, other leaders in thinking on this.
Please, yes.
Yeah, we just wanted to...
You have a good one here.
I do, yeah. The internet, all day long is going to back up this idea about going slow.
Mm-hmm.
Everything out there about dating says, you just can't hurry love, so don't try. And I'm going to read to you from a PBS.org piece called Coronavirus Has Changed Online Dating. It supports both of your first 2 rules, Laura, so I'm just going to kind of go through their kind of evidence and thinking that they brought to the table. So here we go. For some people, slowing down has encouraged them to open up about priorities and feelings earlier on than they would have otherwise. Connor Price, a 40-year-old who recently moved to New York from Los Angeles and works for a nonprofit music organization, found that true when he started seeing a woman right around the time that California shut down. The woman, whom he met through a close friend, didn't want to put her mother in danger of contracting the virus, so she and Price started taking nightly walks in their neighborhoods, keeping 6 foot of distance from each other. It almost felt like dating in the Elizabethan era, Price said. If I could get like one little fingertip in between her shoulder blades through the parka, it was the most exciting thing I'd done in a month. I thought that was really charming and really interesting to think about it that way. Later in the piece, it says this, before the novel coronavirus hit, U.S. couples were already getting married later in life than before. What's happening now is increasing the amount of time that people spend in the courtship stage even more. We're seeing the emergence of a new phase in the courtship trajectory, which is meet online, talk in person. Yes, we're moving forward to the past. We're getting to know somebody before sex.
I think that is fantastic advice, and that really just gives, like you said, the opportunity to slow down. There's a lot of value of that, not only in dating, in all aspects of life, but to be able to be more intentional and think about what you really want instead of just responding to what is happening to you too quickly.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of this thing that my husband says, which it just comes up like weekly in our lives. He always says, let your weakness be your strength. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, work with what you've got or whatever. Yeah. And if this is a thing that's happening, how can we flip it around and make it work for us?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I love that.
And more on the going slow piece, having that loneliness void in our lives, there's other ways to fill that, right? Especially right now, getting connected with a cause that we really believe in, getting connected in our communities. There's other ways to fill that void. And, when we're not slowing down, sometimes what we can do is try to force or manage the other person to kind of become what we want them to be, right? And
everyone loves that. Everyone
Yes.
likes to be put into a box of somebody else's creation. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so, if you have to force somebody to be with you, you're not allowing yourself to meet the person that actually does want to be with you. And from a self-respect perspective, why would you want to be with somebody you forced to stick around with, instead of finding somebody who really does love you? And keeping in mind too the adjustment process, right? We're all a bunch of people who've just been through this huge adjustment of having a quarantine and not maybe working from home and being full-time caregivers to our children, maybe to parents, that sort of thing. So we had this huge adjustment period. There's going to be adjustment period going back into whatever this new normal life is.
Right.
And giving ourselves compassion around that and understanding our partner is going through that. That's another adjustment because, unfamiliar to unfamiliar, even if it is a good thing, it can, you have to get used to it again.
Yes. Yes.
Unfamiliar to unfamiliar. I like that. Yeah, that's something to really stay aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So what you said about a belief system, that kind of leads us into number 3 here, which is know that you're strong. So when I'm working with people who are struggling a little bit in dating, often what will come up is that they feel like they cannot take another heartbreak, that they cannot be disappointed again, that they will break if anything negative happens to them. And so they've put dating on such a pedestal that it feels terrifying. And a lot of times these beliefs are created because we have had traumatic past experiences and we start to believe I'm not enough. Somebody's going to see something about me that, I have to hide because they're going to realize that, I'm not really worth it. And then when that stuff starts to show up, we start to feel kind of fragile, like, oh, I can't have this happen again. Do you see that when you were working with people, Michelle, who've experienced a lot of trauma?
Yeah. And that can lead to self-sabotaging a relationship. I have recently worked with a client who was in this really great relationship. He was connecting really well with the person that he was dating. Everything was going well. But he had this overarching belief of, I can't have my heart broken again. And his partner was someone he was really connecting to. And so he felt that sense of fear, like, this is really good. I don't want to lose it. So he ended up breaking up with her to protect himself. So taking that action. So that's a self-sabotage piece. Or just self-sabotaging in a way where you're creating distance and pushing the other person away. So if that's picking arguments or maybe using substances or just, ghosting the other person, whatever it can be, creating that distance, right? So then maybe they'll break up with me and then I don't have to do it in that
So
way.
it's all like a coping defense mechanism.
Yes. It's a wall we build to protect ourselves.
But the interesting thing is we're protecting ourselves from exactly what we're wanting.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So I think knowing what your what your beliefs are around relationships and dating and in a very compassionate way, looking at the insecurities that you might have or the fears that you might have and trying to work, instead of asking your partner to fix those for you because they just really can't anyway, learning how to
Bummer.
yeah.
Wait.
This changes everything. Figuring out how you can, really create a healthy sense of self-esteem and self-worth that is rooted in your own belief in you, that it doesn't need, and yes, we all love validation, especially from people that we're dating, but that can't be the only thing that feeds our self-esteem. We have to have a value and a self-worth that is aside from that.
So, yeah, that idea of kind of dropping that story, I guess, is what I'm really hearing here. This idea that, we've, no matter what it is that we've been through, at a certain point, we have to kind of let go of that past and move into the future. And I'm always really aware of the ways that we do write these stories for ourselves and become these characters that we either have been sort of pushed into or sort of allowed ourselves to believe in. And when I think back, Laura, of working with you many years ago, that sort of story piece is something that that you and I worked on a lot, sort of, dropping that false story and really imagining a new one, I think. And, maybe that's another list exercise, right? Like, who am I going to be this time? Who do I want to be? And, when I let go of these other ideas, who can I really see myself becoming?
Yes. Right. Yeah. And that you can be, I think, the most authentic version of yourself when you do let go of some of these stories. Just because something happened to you in the past and that is real, maybe say someone broke up with you unexpectedly and you experienced that as a traumatic experience. You could start to create this story in my mind, well, I'm always the girl who gets dumped, or I'm always the girl that I give my heart and it just gets stomped on. And, and then unconsciously, you're always kind of creating that situation. So
Yes.
I see this play out in couples counseling quite a bit, where you have somebody who has a lot of anxiety around relationship and kind of an underlying belief that they're really not lovable. And again, this can be very unconscious. They're not thinking this at the forefront of their mind, but maybe that they, in the end, they're really not worth it. All of that negative stuff. And then they attract people to them that really reflect that back to them. So they'll attract somebody to them who's kind of avoidant and reflects that to them, that they aren't worth it. They're not going to change for them. They're not really committed to the relationship. So even though it's the opposite of what you want, you're unconsciously creating that all the time, because our minds want to find proof that what we believe is true. That's what our mind is always doing. And so we're constantly looking for examples of what we believe to be true as true. So if I believe I'm not enough, I'm going to have to connect with people who will reflect that back to me just to validate my own belief system.
Yeah, confirmation bias, right?
Yeah.
So, this thing about me is true, and then you look for it in other people, like, oh, yep, see, I knew this was coming, and that just reinforces that story. And looking at these stories, right, they come from somewhere, and so kind of breaking down those narratives, and then like what Elsie, you were saying, you can recreate that narrative, right? Who do I want to be this time? Who do I know I already am, but maybe I just have some barriers to that? And thinking of these narratives too, trying to break it down and how is this narrative actually serving me? So is it just creating distance and protecting ourselves from maybe getting hurt, or you really do realize that this isn't serving me? If I want love, right, I have to change this narrative.
Yeah, I think speaking of, another thing that I personally learned from you, Laura, that sort of, self-fulfilling prophecy or law of attraction, you can frame it in any number of ways. But I think that's such an important piece that I wish that we could, maybe that's another whole episode.
Yeah, we could talk about that for an hour. Absolutely. Yeah.
Lots of examples.
Yeah. Well, let's check in. Going back to, so we're on our third and final rule here of stay strong, be strong, know that you're strong. Let's check back with the internet on this one. I pulled some information from an NPR podcast episode called "Love on Lockdown," and these guys framed it really well when they spoke to a woman named Devonna Hoffman, who's a relationship coach.
Damona Hoffman.
Damona Hoffman. Yep. Thank you. Sorry about that. She's a relationship coach and the host of her own podcast called Dates and Mates. Here's what she said. Don't expect your partner to be your everything. They might be the only person you're getting within 6 feet of, but they can't fulfill your every emotional need. Expecting one person to check every box is a recipe for disappointment and resentment. Rather than looking at your partner as just your best friend and your intimate partner, Hoffman says, try to find other avenues and other people in your support network that you can connect with virtually and through distance hangouts. That way, the pressure is off your partner to be your sole support. And I think I just had a conversation with a married friend about this week, and I think this is something that we've been talking about it, but let's just give it one last round, because I just think, no matter how healthy and great and loving your relationship is, it can't be your everything.
No. And if you try to make it that, you're going to be very disappointed and unsatisfied. Esther Perel, who is a famous psychotherapist and has a lot of really great stuff about relationship and connection on YouTube and everywhere on the internet, talks about how this expectation that your romantic partner is supposed to be your best friend, your, soulmate in everything, a mysterious lover, and like all of this long category of things that we're trying to put on one person, it's not possible. You have to have some balance in your life.
Yeah, not having that person become your entire world, but having them complement your world and what your goals are and what your dreams are, and coming along with you and complementing that, not being the center of it.
Right. Which goes back to everything that we've been talking about, that's why you want to really come into dating feeling at a place where you feel whole, that you're not looking for somebody to rescue you or fix anything for you, or not looking for someone who needs to be fixed or rescued. That's another side of this, that sometimes people out of insecurity will look for partners who need to be rescued because they're fearful that they're not enough. And again, that rescuer-rescuee relationship always ends poorly, no matter what the movies tell us.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And trauma can create that as well. So in trauma, we can learn that, okay, the only way that I am loved is taking care of this other person, or taking care of this other person takes the pressure off of me to have to take care of myself.
Yeah. That is a very good point. It's a really good way to not look at your own stuff. Oh, here's someone who's messed up. I'll focus on them.
Right. You're worse than I am. So clearly I'm doing okay.
So we've kind of already covered this in different ways, but just to give this last rule, our spin through of, okay, so if we've worked on strengthening ourselves and we've thought about how to be strong, and then we kind of are feeling that this person that we're talking to is like we're saying here, maybe having their own kind of issues with it. How do we deal with that? I mean, is there a place between going like, this person's not right for me, and maybe this person could be right. I mean, I guess we send them to therapy at Anchor Light. I don't know.
That's the only way.
Yes. The website, anchorlighttherapy.com, we can help you out. No, I think if you're really noticing in dating that somebody has something going on that is really kind of causing you to question the situation, you can first ask yourself if there's something coming up for you where you want to maybe avoid relationship. But I think typically that's something to pay attention to. There's something that seems really off, instead of thinking like, well, it seems like they had 8 cocktails on our date, but maybe they were just nervous. Maybe they're going to change their
Making
behaviors.
excuses for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you probably
8?
don't. Yeah.
At least 12.
Yeah.
I'd be nervous too.
Well, was it over Zoom though? I mean, were they were they on their couch having cocktails?
I haven't thought about the Zoom cocktail rules, but don't overlook things that are not compatible with you. I think that's oftentimes people do that. They're like, yeah, but maybe they'll change this thing. Maybe they don't, and making excuses for behavior that isn't going to really work for you. And it doesn't even have to be that the other person is wrong or bad, but it's like maybe you're super fit and you work out all the time and this person never exercises. Like there's a good chance that that's not going to really work for you.
Yeah, if there's things in our guts, right, that are informing us, and little strings that are being pulled on, like, hey, this doesn't quite match up with what I'm looking for, but maybe I'm just going to stay with it for momentum, or at least I finally found a relationship, or they might change this behavior. So really listening to when things feel off, it's probably because they are.
And I tell all my dating people, don't look at somebody's potential. I mean, it's especially like when we're in our 40s and 50s, people are who they are. If you're thinking that they're going to change something in the future, that is probably in your imagination.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's a pill of reality there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not looking at somebody's potential. That's great.
He doesn't want kids, but he might change his mind. He's probably not going to.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's just an unfair one to try to change too, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
So
Maybe
so
needs
I
a couple
think,
more drinks.
Yeah, exactly.
Could change that.
So what should you do when that kind of like, oh, I don't know about this goes up? Maybe question like, am I becoming fearful? Or is my own stuff coming up here? Or is it in fact that this person is displaying behaviors that really aren't probably going to work for me? Mm-hmm. And then just be free to let them go. They're going to find somebody who's better for them, and you're going to find somebody that's better for you. And we all live happily ever after.
That's right. We're almost out of time, but I would love to hear your take on how do we end those things. And if we're listening to our gut, like Michelle says, and we feel that intuition and we know like, oh God, this isn't right. How do you coach people and help people think about just saying goodbye, saying no thanks, saying,
You just ghost them and you block them.
and let them know over text if you do communicate it. Yeah.
I think honesty with like kindness, just to say like, hey, it was great to get to know you, and I don't feel like we're a match, but I really appreciated the time we spent together, and leave it at that. But I will say this, if anyone tries to argue with you, because I've heard people report that back and convince you, then you might cut them off and just say, you don't owe anyone that you've been on 2 dates with a big explanation about why you're not feeling it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
but
I'm sorry. But letting them know right away and not stringing them along, right? Mm-hmm. So if right, okay, date 2 didn't go well, and they're like, oh, maybe we can do this again sometime, and entertain that in some way as opposed to just, letting them know, hey, this isn't going to work.
And I think people resist doing that because it feels mean, but I think that the honesty is actually the kinder thing. So you're
That's
not
the nicest thing.
like you said, stringing someone along. Yeah.
I love it. Thanks, you guys. This has been a great episode. I think that a lot of people out there are going to feel a bit more shored up and ready to face, next weekend. Here we are Monday. You've got like all week to think about this stuff. And
Make your list.
Do people still date only on the weekends anymore though? I don't even know if that's valid.
Well, Zoom, you can have a Zoom date any night.
Yeah.
Yes. So please, I'm so glad that you tuned in today, and join us again next week where we are going to be continuing topics around relationships and trauma and mental health. And Michelle, once again, tell everyone where they can find us if they want to reach out and connect with us at Anchor Light.
Right. So on Facebook, Holding Ground for the radio show, and on Instagram, it's Holding Ground Talk Radio, all one word. And for Anchor Light Therapy, it's on Facebook, Anchor Light Therapy Collective, and on Instagram, Anchor Light Therapy, all one word. And our website, of course, anchorlighttherapy.com.
All right. Well, thank you. We'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in to Holding Ground. You can find us here every Monday morning at 9 a.m. I'm Laura Richer, owner of Anchor Light Therapy Collective.
And I'm Michelle Mooney, a therapist at Anchor Light Therapy Collective. Find us online at anchorlighttherapy.com.
We'll see you next week.